Hello, everyone. Welcome to our inspiring podcast for this month. I'm delighted to have Sasi Venables with me, and she's a very, very busy lady. So I'm really, really appreciating her time today. Sasi, welcome to the podcast. Really appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me. It is an honor, and I love the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. Really appreciate it. And we're going to dive into culture, which is the big thing today. We're going to talk about culture. But just to introduce Sasi a bit more to show how busy she is. So, first of all, she's the founder of the HR Confidence Club, which is a magnificent work that she does over, I think, the last couple of years. Is that right, Sassy?
Yeah, we had 2 year anniversary on the
Yeah.
1st of May.
Yeah, congratulations from that point of view. HR specialist, and Sassy and I have already caught up before and had some really good conversations. And we even had a conversation today off air about smiling and how infectious it is and makes people feel good. So, and also Sassy is a coach and a speaker as well. So, lots of great stuff. So, I'll introduce later how you can get in contact with Sassy at the end of the podcast. But Sassy's been given 5 questions today as preparation, and it's around culture, which you and I have got such a strong belief about. So, should we get stuck in, Sassy?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Fab. So, the first question I kind of popped across was, what does a great culture really look like beyond, posters, slogans, etc.? How's it really look and feel each day?
It's really funny because I think people perceive me to be an idealist, and perhaps I am. But culture to me, it is the everyday moments, little
Mm,
tiny things that just matter so much to an individual,
yeah.
which you could relate to a value that you see on the
Yes.
wall. Maybe it's kindness, maybe it's
Yeah.
respect, but it's seeing it every day.
Yeah.
So we're all busy, aren't we? We're all busy, we're all under pressure. But when you're needing to talk to your manager, they're
Yeah.
not sighing at you,
Yeah.
they're not you're not a burden to them
Yes.
because you've knocked on the door.
Yeah.
Um, so it's those micro moments, I think,
Yeah.
that really demonstrate what a good, positive,
Yeah.
welcoming culture is for me.
Yeah. And it's fascinating, isn't it? Those, I always go back to Stephen Covey, emotional bank account, where could be the smallest thing to you, but it's the biggest thing to that person. And actually, just giving them 5, 10 minutes of your time to talk through could be take a burden off their shoulders, or really kind of just get them more productive, etc. So those micro bits, I think, are so important to really
Yeah.
pick up on. And I even go back in kind of my work days. If people go, "I'm fine," we know they're not fine. So we need to go and have a chat with them, not in a public space because that's not fair, but actually just say, "You don't seem yourself today." What's going on. I'm sure you've experienced that as well.
Absolutely. And I think, like you said, those micro moments build over time because if there is something that you really do need to go to your manager about,
Yeah.
they know that you're not wasting their time. They
Yes.
know that it's something that's important, but
Yeah.
you're more likely to open up
Yeah.
to them rather than
Yeah.
just, maybe sometimes going off sick. We see sickness absence figures have
Yeah.
skyrocketed. We
Yes.
know that conflict is such a big
Yeah.
a big problem for organisations at the moment. It's costing us a
Yes.
lot of money, conflict
Yeah.
and sickness absence. And in my role as a specialist, an ER specialist, a lot of the times grievances come about through not being heard.
Correct.
That's
Yeah.
disharmony going on in a team
Yeah.
or with two
Yeah.
people or with your manager because they can't talk about it. They don't feel
Yeah.
listened to and heard. And I think
Yeah.
that that's the type of culture as
Yeah.
well that
Yeah.
if you can be open, honest, and have those micro moments, it really
Yeah.
helps to
Yeah.
reduce those types of cases.
Because it also carries on, doesn't it? You said about conflict, and I think the last stats was like 26 billion pound a year. From the CIPD. I mean, that's enormous amounts of money, but also time with those people. We don't just switch it off at 5 o'clock at the end of the day. People take it to their family, those kind of bits, and then people start to build allies. So it gets out of control rather than actually speaking to people early on or picking up things and just having a chat. Because otherwise, human beings become hypersensitive and hypervigilant. don't
Yeah.
they? So if they're not
Yeah.
spoken to or heard, then people go, well, what's going on here? So then people start to fill gaps, don't they?
They do fill gaps, and also that hurt gets really ingrained as well.
Yes.
And if you could have had the conversation earlier, like you said, you might
Yeah.
have been able to resolve it, put it to bed,
Yeah.
and it is gone and forgotten.
Yeah.
You might need to rebuild some trust
Yes.
perhaps after that. But the longer something goes on, the
Yeah.
more ingrained it becomes, the bigger that elephant
Yes.
in the room becomes.
Yeah.
And the hurt takes just so much longer to try. Well, sometimes when you
Yes.
see employment tribunals and things, the hurt,
Yeah.
it can't be repaired after
No.
that.
No.
And like
And
you say, the cost.
yeah, and also that hurt has built up over time, where people then have built more information to protect themselves. Which,
Yeah.
and I remember we did a good bit of work a couple of years ago, where the organisation it was around conflict had totally forgotten how it all started, because they
Yeah.
built up all this evidence to try and find out the problem with people, etc. Rather, and when we went in and worked with them and said, well, when did it first start? They did not have a clue. They
No.
couldn't pinpoint, so you could see how it festered over time and actually been forgotten about.
Absolutely. And I think that works the same for the individual as well, that if they've been hurt or harmed once, they're
Yeah,
then looking for that proof, aren't they,
correct.
as evidence. If they've raised a concern or a complaint, and then a manager or a colleague does
Yeah,
something which is unconnected, but their
yes,
perception is, oh, it's
yeah,
because I've raised a complaint.
yes,
It just keeps
yeah,
on building.
yeah. No, fantastic. This is really good, and I just love those micro moments, because that's a strong belief that we have, is those small things make a big difference to
They
organisations.
do.
Yeah,
And you get one problem and it can undo so much good.
yes,
And it takes so many then micro moments or even big moments to
yeah,
rebuild that. And
yeah,
you're on the back foot all the time if you're having to play catch up.
yeah,
So I am a believer of conversations and trying to do the
yeah,
best for the individual
yeah,
in my role as much as you can.
yeah.
Um, but always in the back of my mind thinking about the organization as
Correct.
well.
Yeah,
Where could this go? This person isn't being listened, well, they perceive that
yes,
they're not being listened to by
yeah,
their line manager. How
yeah,
can I help as a HR
yes.
person?
Yeah, yeah. And it goes back to that communication part. Absolutely
Yeah.
key from that point of view. So, how can leaders and teams create a workplace where people feel safe to speak up, take risks, and make mistakes? And that's a bit of a good
Oh,
question, isn't it? So, that's a bit of a full on one. But I just think that's a really interesting one,
wow.
because people talk it, but how do you actually demonstrate it?
It is some, I would say this is probably one of the areas that a lot of leaders get wrong. I don't want
Yeah,
to sort of be
yeah.
stereotypical and
I like the way you just moved your face then. You went, they get it
like,
wrong.
oh,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know, because people
yeah,
listen back and be like, oh, that's really harsh.
yeah. No, true.
Um, But, I think organizations don't obviously nobody wants to make a mistake. I think that's the first
Yes.
thing that we should say.
Yeah.
I don't think any employees are out there thinking, oh,
Yeah.
what mistakes can I make
Yes. Yes.
today?
Yeah.
Things just go wrong because
Yeah.
we're human. And I think whilst I understand we need to learn from these things as well,
Yeah.
we also need to put them into perspective. So,
Yeah.
is it going to cost the organisation several thousands of pounds
Yes.
to undo? Actually, probably not. I mean, okay, there could be health and safety risks and things like that, of
Yes.
course.
Yeah.
I think sometimes the psychological aspects of people, because it looks bad on them as a leader if one
Correct.
of their team get it wrong,
Yeah.
they can come down a bit harshly
Yeah.
on people, in my
Yeah.
personal opinion. So I think, again, it's about setting your purpose from the
Yeah.
start. So, do you each know what you're there to do to achieve for the organization, and how
Yeah.
do you work together as a team, and how do you
Yeah.
work together with your colleagues? And is what you're doing for the good and the benefit of the organization?
Yeah.
So, I think, do you know that you're making a mistake before you've enacted it?
Yeah.
And have you got the opportunity to put that right?
Yeah.
Or does it unfold afterwards? But I
Yeah.
think then it's about the conversation that happens.
Yeah.
What can we learn from that? how can we make sure it doesn't happen again?
Yeah.
Let's unpick it in a kind way and
Yes.
not a
Yeah.
punitive way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm
Yeah.
I'm one, I hate making mistakes, and I do
Yes.
make mistakes,
Yes. Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
You might be rushing around from one
Yeah.
meeting to the next, and you write something down to do, and then you think, oh gosh, I've forgotten to send that email three
Yes.
days later.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so we all do it, but I think it's about those conversations, is what I would
Yeah.
say, learning from that and being
Yeah.
kind when something goes wrong for the
Yeah.
first time.
Yeah. And I think this is really fascinating where I've seen it before, where people have made mistakes. They worked for a company for 15 years, good reputation. They've made one mistake and the company's thrown the book at them and gone, well, these are the rules. And you go, come on, where's that human approach? It's not a trend. And I'm a great believer of, if people keep making the same mistakes, that
Yeah,
is a trend. So
yeah,
but actually, we need to be kind, and these are human beings. And going back to your bit there, Sassy, we all make mistakes. I don't think people get out of bed in the morning to go, today I'm going to make a mistake and I want everyone to think awful of me and I want people to have a go and I want to go for a grievance. Nobody does that and gets out of bed
yeah.
from that point of view. But what happens is, I think when we don't learn from those mistakes and we throw the book at the colleagues, then they become to be defensive, different behaviours, those kind of things, which then we causing conflict when we don't necessarily need to, do we?
Fear sets in then because
Yes.
they've been treated in that way. And it could be a severe thing that
Yeah.
needs, a robust discussion about
Yes.
it and unpicking,
Yeah.
let's put
Yeah.
this right. Do you understand what you did wrong? Do you
Yeah.
understand the implications?
Yeah.
But you can still do that in a kind way.
Yeah.
Um, so that conversation around that feedback is really important. I
Yeah.
would say feedback generally, I don't know whether we are that good at training people on the giving
Yeah.
and receiving of feedback.
Yeah.
And I remember when I had some time off due to mental health decline,
Yeah.
and it was a slow erosion over about 8 to 9 months. And I remember in that period that I was quite fearful of making mistakes.
Yes.
And because I was fearful of making mistakes, I'd make more mistakes.
Great.
I couldn't kind of lift myself out
Yeah.
of the fog of it all to look at things
Yeah.
objectively. And I didn't feel safe at the time to have the conversations that I
Yeah.
needed to have.
Yeah.
Um, so those conversations are key, and role modeling
Yeah.
vulnerability. I think as a leader,
Yeah.
you're not always going to have all of the answers. You can't
Yeah.
possibly, and that
Yeah.
is okay. But I don't
Yes.
think leaders are comfortable in saying, I haven't got the answer. Let's brainstorm it together. Let's find the
Yeah.
answer together. We
Yeah,
need more of
I
that.
think this is so true around. I think the leadership part is a real kind of bit that I've seen some fabulous leaders, and the teams will, servant leadership, and they will follow leadership and do anything for that leader. But the leadership treats them with empathy, kindness, shows vulnerability, and says, actually, I may not know the answer here, but let's work it out together, and then people come with it. Whereas I've seen then the other type of leadership, of dictatorial leadership,
Mm.
and then people, my way or the highway, and people just drop. And you'll see they have a bigger, higher turnover as a company and that kind of stuff. So you can see the effects of how important that leader is. And I just like it when people talk about psychological safety, vulnerability, that we see it from the leader and then it just kind of follows through the organization. You can see that nice ripple effect. And I think people get confused, Sassy, we've shown about vulnerability, which some people think vulnerability is really showing all their flaws. Whereas actually, when you and I just said is, I may not know the answer to this. Can we work it through?
Yeah,
That's workplace vulnerability, isn't it?
yeah,
Have you seen that
absolutely.
before? Where people get vulnerability kind of a bit wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they think oh, well, I can't sit there crying at my desk. Well, no, nobody wants that, and we're not
Yes.
asking that. But
Yeah.
equally, if you're our manager, whatever level that you're
Yeah.
at, don't pretend you know all the answers. Don't
Great.
pretend that you're really confident when you're
Yeah.
not, because actually we can see through that when we come to
Yeah.
ask you a question.
Yes. Yeah.
Like that confidence in being able to back and forth on
Yeah.
you know, and I don't want to sort of think it's not about challenge, it's just about dialogue, isn't it? If you
Yes.
don't understand where the leader's coming from,
Yeah.
it's harder to get on board
Yeah.
with what they want and go off and
Yeah.
implement and enact it.
Yeah.
Um, and I just think it's just much richer to
Yes.
have different perspectives. Ultimately,
Correct.
a leader will need to make a decision, and
Correct.
I
Yeah.
hope that employees would then, okay,
Yeah.
I've accepted that. I've given my
Yes.
perspective, I've
Yeah.
given my input, and I feel heard.
Yeah.
This is the decision, and I will
Yes.
go away
Yeah.
and implement that, even if I might not agree, because I've
Correct.
actually been able to say, oh, I think there's something that
Yes.
you need to know. Um, but knowing that your leader is open,
Yeah.
to a degree, you
Yeah.
can't go telling all the companies
Yes. Yeah.
secrets or anything like that. But that openness and transparency and
Yeah.
that vulnerability, let's work it out, is
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
important for me, in
And
my
I
opinion.
just love that bit there of the leader's got to make a decision at the end of the day. You can't abdicate your responsibilities because you take the salary. Therefore, that comes with responsibility in that. But there is ways of doing it to make sure the team feel empowered, listened to. And I've worked with so many people that go, do you know what? I really respect you listening. And I know you've got to make a decision either way, but actually, I just feel better that I've got it off my shoulders and I've
Yeah.
talked about it. And I think that's key, isn't it? And a lot of people go to me, oh, that takes ages to do. It doesn't, because it saves time in the long run, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And and it's, yeah, and again, I think people think I'm idealistic. Maybe I am idealistic, but it doesn't have to be long-winded conversations.
No.
It's more, could I just give you this input because I'm not sure that
Yes.
you know about it?
Yeah.
Oh, I do know, but thanks anyway. You've
Yeah.
affirmed what I was
Yeah.
thinking. Or no, I didn't have that piece of information,
Yeah.
and that's changed my thought
Yeah.
process. I mean, obviously, if you've got somebody, and I have had people in the team who just won't let things go,
Yeah.
which can be really frustrating.
Yeah.
But again, ultimately, you just you just say, I need to make a decision. I've really
Correct.
heard what you've got to
Yeah.
say. I need to do this, this, and this, unfortunately, on
Yes.
this occasion. And you'd
Yeah.
hope that that person would then understand and let it
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
But like you say, I think in the long run, it is quicker than the
Yeah.
conflict and the back and
Correct.
forth.
Well, we know through all the work we do, 9 times out of 10, people through a grievance process do not get what they want.
No.
And I use the word there want. It's not a need. They've gone to a want. And actually, you go all that heartache, misery. It's taken 3 to 6 months to get there to an outcome. Those kind of bits. So actually, having those conversations earlier, the culture just breeds a good way of feedback, talking, openness, etc. By actually displaying it, doesn't it?
It really does, and you look at, um, you know, if you can try and resolve it early enough between the individual and the manager or between the two individuals, then we're not going through all those stages of
Yeah.
different managers getting involved, different
Yes.
managers investigating it, all of the interviews that have to happen,
Yeah.
all of the meetings, then ACAS getting involved,
Correct.
and the costs are,
Yeah.
as you've already talked about, the costs are
Yeah.
astronomical. And normally, at the point that you're going to a hearing or a meeting of
Yeah.
some sort, somebody's so stressed out that they've gone off sick,
Correct.
or if somebody is that way inclined and they're not
Yeah.
genuinely sick, they will try to go off sick to buy
Correct.
time. And again, it just delays the process and
Yeah.
it costs
Yeah.
enormous amounts of
Yeah.
money.
Yeah. And a bit there is going through that process. We're all human beings. We're all affected. This is the human cost, which I think so we need to really raise of going through these processes. It's not just the colleague and other colleague, let's say two colleagues, it's the person investigating it, it's HR, it's their families, it's then
Yeah.
leaders, etc., bringing other people in as independents are now involved. So it becomes a big kind of piece, which
Yeah.
actually could have probably nipped in the bud quite early.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
when you're a values-led person, well, I think actually nearly every investigator I've supported and
yeah,
advised through policy, yeah, I don't know if I'm making the right decision here.
yeah,
I can only go with what's in front of me, but this person is in
Yeah.
absolute
Yeah.
bits. They're really emotional. The two things don't seem to be adding up, and what am I
Yeah.
missing? And again, by the time you went 3 months in,
Yeah.
and stories may have changed, or
Yes. Yeah.
witnesses might not be
Yeah.
wanting to come forward, or information
Yeah.
changes. It is sometimes hard
Yeah.
to make the decision, and they take it home with them when they're
Correct.
making that decision. They do take it home with
Yeah.
them. So you're right, everybody's
Yeah.
affected.
Yeah. No, spot on. So this is I know a topic which you're very, very good at is what are the most effective ways to boost performance without burning people out or harming trust? What's the best ways to improve performance without burning people out?
Well, I don't I don't want to keep repeating myself back.
Yeah.
It's communication,
Yeah.
but it is just so key because, again, if somebody knows the role that they're meant to be doing,
Yeah.
and that we've trained them how to do that
Correct.
effectively, and
Yeah.
we've supported them, or we've told them, "Oh,
Yeah.
this didn't quite go to plan," then it gives them an opportunity to improve.
Yeah.
Um, but it is about support. I see too many people put in new roles and they're left to their own devices.
That is absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on. They're good at individually what they've done, and then put into a new role and go right off you go. And I've seen it so many times.
And it's just a completely different skill set
Yeah.
sometimes. And it happens too often. You'll have a specialist, a
Yeah.
technical specialist who then, they do want promotion,
Yeah.
absolutely. But we're not preparing them before they get
Correct.
to it. They get the
Yeah.
job. Then we're on the back foot, really,
Correct.
there,
Yeah.
trying to give them the skills.
Yeah.
And fundamentally, sometimes they don't have the skills to people manage because that is a
Correct.
completely different skill
It's
set.
completely different. And I remember the first time that I looked after people, gone from being an individual in the bank to then managing 10 people. The first days I had a person that had some real issues. And I'll share with you, Sassy, I didn't know whether to hug the person, and it sounds really like, do I pat them? I didn't know what to do because it was brand new to me.
Yeah.
And I think this is the bit we're still not learning, that we need people to be trained. And through those softer emotional skills, that we are all human beings. We have things at home, things that go on, rather than just going, tick, you're promoted.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And you can't always leave what's going on at home,
Yeah,
at the office door. Um, the world has changed so much,
yeah,
and my dad's not very well at the
yeah,
moment, and I can't book hospital appointments at the
yeah,
weekend. My
yeah,
work have been really supportive in
yeah.
being able to be released to go and,
Yes.
and help
Yeah,
my dad. So it's one less thing
yeah,
to worry about. But it is in the back of my mind. I can't just think, right, I'm
yeah,
at work now.
yeah.
My phone's there now.
Yes.
I'm on all the time because I don't
Yeah,
know if he's going to ring.
yeah,
And we need to be appreciative of
yes,
that and
yeah,
supportive.
yeah,
And I think when you get to know people in your
yeah.
team, whether they are genuine or not
Correct.
with the way that they behave.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I just echo that bit of where we are now with organisations. The more that you can be accommodating, listen to what's going on, and kind of from that point of view, the more you get back from people.
Yeah,
You can see
absolutely.
that, and the organisations that are flourishing are actually being those more modern organisations, really caring, etc. The ones that are diminishing have gone back to the old ways, and actually people are going, well, I'll find another job. I'll go and find. I can't go this way anymore. So you've definitely seen that dynamic change. Definitely seen
Oh,
that change.
absolutely. And I think, COVID, having to sort of change overnight to be working remotely,
Yeah,
I think people's priorities massively changed during that
correct.
period.
Yeah,
And whilst there's some jobs that have to be done in the office, they absolutely
yeah,
have to be. There are others that can be more flexible and
yes,
agile, but for nebulous reasons, really, around, well, we're paying for the building, so it's a
yes,
cost thing.
yeah,
But then do we want to be trying to get out of that contract? Do we want to be renting those rooms and offices instead and
Yes.
doing it a bit differently
Yeah.
than forcing everybody back when
Yeah.
morale and productivity is going to
Yeah.
diminish?
Correct.
So, but again, people sound quite idealistic about
Yeah.
that. But you've only got to look at your retention, your turnover, your
Correct.
productivity, your
Yeah.
staff survey, if you're doing
Yeah.
any of those. And is there an alternative way where you're being
Yeah.
able to meet, if it's financial agreements, obligations,
Yes.
covenants, etc., in a different way?
Correct. Yeah. And do you know what, Sassy, I smile. If you were to put me in an office every day, I would be a pain in the backside because I would like to talk to people and I like to do stuff. So,
Oh, yeah, me
whereas
too.
actually, yeah, we'd be terrible together. But if like at home, I can get so much stuff done. And the thing is, I'm an early person, so I will get on early, get loads of stuff done before emails and all that kind of stuff. And I love it. It makes me feel really good. Whereas if I was traveling to work for an hour, then I'd get into work, that kind of stuff. It's about being productive, isn't it?
Make a coffee, have a little
Yeah.
chat to the people. I mean, I do. I get less done at work, and I am conscious because I am a bit of a
Yeah.
chatterbox.
Yeah.
But equally, you do find out a lot more, and you can have those conversations that you wouldn't be able to have like on
Yes.
Teams.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a double-edged sword, isn't
Yeah.
it? I
But there's a
think
balance, isn't there?
there's
That's,
a
I think
balance.
that's the key where I see is that there's always a balance. And it's just that those organisations that are trying to get the balance, you can see what they're doing, and actually people are feeling really good, want to be back in the office, etc. Whereas people that are going back to right, it's 9 till 5, and there's no leeway in the 5 days a week. People are leaving and they're not enjoying it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I agree. Absolutely. Um, yeah, so boosting performance. I think as well, I'm a big advocate for obviously making sure job descriptions are up to date because
good.
sometimes, especially in more traditional organisations,
Yeah,
they aren't always kept up to date, and then the role morphs and evolves, and then
yeah,
you've a problem's emerged, and you're looking at
yeah.
the job description, it's like it doesn't match
Yes,
what we're
yeah,
now being asked
yeah,
to do, and that can be quite difficult. So I think it
yeah,
is keeping on top of things, but
yeah,
nipping things in the bud as well.
yeah,
So
yeah,
having those conversations to say, oh, this
yeah,
went a bit wrong. What can we do to improve that?
yeah,
Do you need refresher training?
yeah.
Working out what's gone wrong, and then you'll know
Correct.
how to fix it. But
Yeah,
it's absolutely doing it as early as you can when a
yeah,
problem
yeah.
arises. But I think as well, and we've touched upon it already, that you want to do more for a good organisation. You get
Correct.
lots more goodwill if you know
Yeah,
you've been cared for, looked
yeah,
after, valued.
yeah.
Performance is boosted
Yes,
anyway,
yeah.
naturally. Um,
But I also feel those organisations that went away from regular reviews to more half yearly, annually, etc. From our point of view, have definitely missed the point that people now do want regular contacts, but it's not regular, form filling reviews. It's regular. Can we just sit down? How you feeling? How's things going? What blockers or barriers are getting in the way?
yeah,
What support do you need from me? This is what I need from you. Those kind of, so those adult to adult conversations, we're seeing that if we can bring those back, the organisation reduces sickness, retention, people feel valued. Whereas going to those older ways, people are then scrabbling around half a year for information. Then the end of year, if they use the bell curve or a different formula, that then they're causing conflict issues. So we've definitely seen about boosting performance and reducing burnout is the regular touch points.
absolutely. I would agree. And I think what's really important as well is really noticing, getting your managers to notice the good,
Yes. Yeah.
things that have gone really well,
Yeah.
that are just taken for granted a little
Yeah.
bit.
Great.
And I was having this conversation actually with one of my best friends who's new into line
Yeah.
management. And she said, well, why have I got to tell somebody that they've done a good job when it's the job that they've employed to
Oh,
do?
yes. Yeah.
And I was like, I know,
Yeah.
but you like to know that you've done a good job, don't you? You
Yeah.
like to be thanked and you like to be
Yes.
praised. You like
Yeah.
that of recognition, someone's noticed.
Correct.
And that's the same for everybody,
Yeah,
whether it's on their job description in their contract or not.
great.
It's your hygiene factors, isn't it?
Yes.
It's your
Yeah,
motivators.
yeah.
A
But
sense
it
of
also,
pride.
yeah, it's a sense of pride. It feels good for yourself to say, and I always believe um, saying well done and the reason that people have
Yes.
done well, because then people connect to it. Whereas I've seen before, a bit Americanized, where people go, great job. And I go, I'm not sure what I've done. Because if you use the
Yeah.
word great, therefore in my head, it means a big explicit word. But I think the more if we can say to people, do you know what, thanks for staying late, for putting that effort in. This is the impact it's had for our client or whoever it is. Just want to say, really good job, thank you. That goes that further for that person rather than just great job.
It does. It really does. Because again, they'll be like, oh, they have actually noticed what I've
Yes.
done
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they've given me some feedback. Oh, I
yeah.
know I was on the right track. I'll do
Yes.
that again.
Yeah,
Um, it's more, I think it's more genuine. So something
yeah.
like that, oh, well done, doesn't feel
No,
sincere to me.
no. And we all know when it's insincere.
Yeah.
And I always remember I worked with a boss, and he would say to me, "How was your weekend?" And before I could even finish, he went, "Great, that's amazing." And I think I've not even finished. So
Yeah.
it was a tick box exercise rather than actually genuinely wanted to listen. And then I noticed over a period of time that when he used to say to me, "How was my weekend?" I'd go, "Fine."
Yeah.
He didn't want to tell the story then. So yeah, this is fantastic. So last question I'm going to ask today, Ceci, which is really good. How do you really develop that kind of inclusive culture? How do we really? We know we've heard from the states, from a DE&I perspective and etc., which is totally draconian, wrong from that point of view. But how do we really develop an inclusive culture that people feel that they can be their true selves?
Wow. It's quite a difficult one, I think, because people have so much bias, don't they? That
Yeah,
well, you hope that they don't, but they do.
yeah,
When you start to unpick the stats
yeah,
around attraction, we should be building it actively and proactively building it into everything that we do.
yeah,
We've got legislation that exists,
yeah,
and if you're values led, you would be
yeah,
being responsible for delivering on that. I think people are under pressure,
yeah,
which doesn't excuse it in any way, shape, or form. And
yeah.
I think, but what they're not doing is delving into the benefits of inclusion and
Yes,
belonging, which is all the
yeah,
things we've already talked
yeah, yeah,
about
yeah,
productivity and things.
yeah.
Um, but I think what's just intangible things? I say tangible things is about looking at your stats because you can look to see, well,
Good.
where is there a problem
Yeah,
and what do we need to do? Where are
yeah,
we advertising? So if it's attraction, where are we advertising our roles?
correct.
Is that in predominantly, you know, white
Yeah,
places? How are we attracting
yeah,
ethnic minority people? How are we
yes,
attracting
yeah,
LGBTQIA?
yeah,
But also, what do our values say and show?
correct.
Are we
Yeah,
supportive of events? Are
yes,
we? I know there's an element there of performative
yeah,
inclusion days,
yeah,
but I think it's still important that organisations do support those awareness
correct.
days.
Yeah,
They should be supporting them every day, not just on that
yes,
one day of year
yeah,
where
yeah,
it's an
yeah,
anniversary. But that would be where I'd say, how are you demonstrating that you are inclusive?
yes, yeah,
What happens when a member of your team comes to you to say that they want to transition? How are
yes,
they going to be
yeah,
supported?
yeah,
What's
spot
the
on.
confidentiality
Yeah,
around that? I mean, it is absolutely crucial
yeah,
and it could happen. I think organizations perhaps don't believe these things will happen.
yeah,
So they think, oh, I'll put it off rather than
yeah,
thinking I want to be prepared. So I think there's a
yes, yeah,
preparedness element
yeah,
there
yeah,
and training, of course, and
yeah,
not just your 2 year, let's
yeah,
do a refresher
yes, yeah,
module. let's build it into everything that we do. And I think some of it even is around that introversion and extroversion work. Are we giving people a voice in meetings, or is it the highest paid person that always speaks first? And so why bother, because you're just going to put your head above the parapet, so to speak. So again, it's in the micro moments, but I think proactively, really demonstrating that you are supportive of all protected characteristics and people in general.
And it's fascinating when we talk to people about protected characteristics that people still don't know the protected characteristics. And then when you talk it through, people go, oh yeah, that makes sense. But it's the lens that people aren't using enough through values led to go, actually, are we being an organisation that's truly inclusive, or are we putting selective lenses on those kind of bits? So we work with some fabulous organisations that put a really great lens on. They may not always get it right, but when we speak to colleagues, they go, do you know what? They're giving it a good go. They're really trying their hardest to make sure it's an inclusive environment. That's what we would like to see more of. And I think going back to introversion and extroversion, we're just a great believer about the Pareto law, the 80-20 rule or 20-80 rule, that we know the person that speaks the loudest controls 80% of the actions. Whereas we work with people saying, no, actually give people their, so maybe in shorter breakout groups, people get to talk, they feel comfortable, etc. But yeah, very fascinated about inclusive from that point of view.
And inviting people in, not as in a, oh, you're a person of colour, so come and talk to us.
Correct. Yes.
about that.
Yeah.
But you know, if people are reluctant to speak up, there's kind and gentle ways of inviting that voice to the table, isn't it? Of course, you don't want to be putting somebody on the spot. Oh, Sarah, do you want to give your view on this? But you might clock something that's been said another time, and at the meeting say, oh, Sarah, you had a really good idea about such and such. I've thought about it. You know, should we raise it here? So you're inviting them to contribute if they want to. So small, again, micro moments like that are important.
It was great. So Jenny, who works with us at ICL, her and I had a great conversation last week about women in business, why it's really important to celebrate. And we were at an event, an awards event, which Jenny was put forward for, but we were really talking about why those are so important. But we were also talking about recently that there was two directors, male and female, same company, but they walked into a boardroom and the boardroom went, this is so-and-so, the gentleman. And they went, oh, this is the gentleman's wife. And you're like, you're just going to go, oh. Still organisations and people are still missing those points. And actually that we're all human beings, we're all individuals from that point of view, we all contribute. But it's great, like Jenny and I had a fabulous conversation last week about it. And that was just even education, still bits for me, just me asking some questions, etc. So we can all, but we've got to be prepared to constantly learn.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we can't know it all. And things change, merge, evolve, you know. But it's about recognizing that and not being too proud to say, oh, I don't know the answer.
Correct.
I don't want to get this wrong. Could you please help me? Or I'll go away and learn, you know. And it is really difficult. I'm a person that really tries to respect anybody and everybody, as long as they're not being, you know, rude and disrespectful and out and out a bully and things like that. So, you know, the whole use of people putting pronouns on their signature. Some people want to use them, some people won't want to use them. Organisations want to do it to show that they're inclusive. But when you track who actually uses them, unless you've got non-binary, LGBTQIA people who are out there and accepting of who they are, people won't want to use them. It's predominantly cis people who want to and are happy to use them. So again, I think that had a little bit of backlash. And I think organisationally, people in general, we just need to accept that there might be people who aren't.
Yeah.
He, her, he, him,
Yes.
her, she,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and use whatever pronouns people
Yes.
ask us to, and
Correct.
respect that.
Yeah. And the bit there is, I always look at it, does it harm you in any way?
Yeah,
Does it
yeah,
harm you by saying that or talking to that? It doesn't, does it? And I think the more we can get to that point, it would just be a nicer place to work. But it goes back to that culture again in work, isn't it? That
yeah.
actually, if we can really treat people as individuals, really listen to people, and actually, if it doesn't harm you, what's the problem? There is no problem at the end of the day.
No, and that's put something in my mind about harming people. There's been quite a lot of discussion lately following um, the BAFTAs and
Yes. Yeah.
the Tourette slur, and there's an element of pitting protected
Yes.
characteristics against one
Yeah.
another. And ultimately, that person might not have meant what they
Yeah.
said and might not have really known,
Yes.
what they were
Yeah.
saying. But ultimately, it did cause harm.
Correct.
So we need to recognise that
Mm.
that caused harm to a
Yeah.
number of people.
Yeah.
And I think there's an element of argument that we should forget it because
Yeah.
they didn't know what they were saying.
Yeah.
But it's the history, it's the context,
Correct.
it's the years
Yeah.
where those words or any
Yes.
other words,
Yeah.
etc., have caused harm to
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. No, totally agree. Totally agree. And I think it's a great example for us to finish up on from today. So, can I just say a huge thank you, Sasi, for coming along today, giving up your time. And I know you're super busy from work and also home as well. But I know you and I could talk for days on culture. We
It's
could
gone really
really,
fast.
it has, hasn't it? We could
Yeah.
really talk for days for culture. So, Sasi, how can people reach out to you, connect with you? What's the best way to do that?
The best way is LinkedIn. I'm on it nearly every day. I love it. I know
Yeah,
people have got some
yeah,
issues with LinkedIn at the moment, but I'm
yeah,
Sasi Venables on LinkedIn.
yeah,
Follow me on there. Drop me a DM if you want to have a chat about
yeah,
anything, or you can get me on email as well, which is
yeah,
Sarah, my given birth name,
yeah.
Sarah Venables at thehrconfidenceclub.com.
Fantastic. So, just a huge thank you to Sassy today. Really, really appreciate your time, etc. And I hope your dad's okay as well. So, really hope he's okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
No,
Thanks for inviting me. It's been a lot of fun.
it's been fantastic. I really loved it. So, may we do more in the future, Sassy.
I hope so. That'll be fun. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Sassy.
Bye.